Diversity Chat, where we bridge the gaps of diversity and destroy ignorance before it destroys another life. And today I have a guest with me, one of my college mates that I've known for like 12, 13 years. So thank you so much for being on here with me today. You're always a light in a dark place, and love seeing your smile and your joy, levels, being lifting other people up. So that's really dope. If you could please introduce yourself with, sharing your name, what you're up to in the world.
Okay, well, my name is Adrian Lane. I am from Cleveland, Ohio originally, but I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I am an illustrator. I am a lover of God. And I am in a process of working more so on storytelling. It has been an awesome experience, but at the same time, I'm just learning and growing and enjoying what God is doing.
Awesome. And then I do have other kind of questions that can be kind of awkward for people, but I like them because they help people who are not watching it. Maybe they're just listening, if they're sight impaired, or if we do listen to turn into a podcast. So thank you for sharing your name and where you're from, where you're at. One another question is, what ethnic group do you identify as?
Well, African American, Black. That's what I am. Of course, I have, I did Ancestry a couple of years ago, and I found out like the little nuances, but majority I will claim as Black. Yeah.
What's one of the nuances that kind of surprised you, if any?
What really surprised me is when I found out that I have Scandinavian in me. I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's Italian, like 1%. I was like, okay, that's also interesting. Majority is from the Congo area. I was like, whoop, whoop, okay. So I had a little Ghana, Nigeria, Mali in there. So I was like, all right. But it was just some other areas that I was just like, yo, that's shocking. Like when it went into Rome, and I was like, wow, it's just amazing how all this just has come together. So yeah.
Adrian.
Yeah, the Adrian, exactly.
Really interesting. I've kind of wanted to do one of those tests. That's really exciting. What's your age, if you're willing to share?
No, I'm just playing. I'm 35 years. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So I know we're talking about a few different things. Faith, Christianity, Black girl magic. We're talking about Disney, and specifically one of the movies we saw that you walked out of the scene and I almost did, and I was like, I wish I did.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to start? Do you feel flow for anything specific, or you just want me to go for it?
Just go ahead and go for it. I'm up.
Okay. All right. So let's start with Christianity and magic.
Okay. Right. Just right in there. Christianity and magic.
So what comes to mind with that?
It's a lot. And I think this is where it kind of has a route in, like just childhood things. Of course, Disney is tied into that because a lot of us, when we were growing up, we watched Disney as well. You heard all about magic and the wonderful world of magic. You probably learned little tricks, little sleight of hand, just little minor things. You wasn't probably delving into like the deeper levels. And that's one thing, is everything that you can get involved in has ranks and levels. And normally there's like the superficial level where you could just kind of play around with it, and it's like, oh, you move on. But then there are like levels where you can just grow deeper. That's like growing deeper in God, like carnal Christian, as they say, or just like, so I'm like, oh yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, I'm good, but I don't go to church all like that. I don't pray all like that. It's not that deep to me. So it's like with everything, there's certain levels to it. But when we come down to magic, just in general, it's like it's very appealing. It's very how should I put it? It's like a world within itself where we kind of bypass how important we probably need to take it into consideration. Because if you literally just go do a quick Google search or go to the dictionary and you look at magic, it's like literally about just a sleight of hand. Or what I mean by that is just doing little tricks or things to make something appear as real, but it's really not. And then when it comes down to the synonyms, oh my goodness, have you ever looked at the synonyms of magic? There's a whole list of like, for the most part, majority of us, when we look at the synonyms, we probably would be like, oh, okay, yeah, but what's so serious or deep about that? Because a lot of it is very prevalent right now. So it's like it's in the same category as sorcery. It's the same category as witchcraft. It's the same category as necromancy. I had to look that up. I was like, necromancy? What is that?
I don't even know what it is.
Necromancy is a form of speaking to the dead. It's like you conjure up and do certain rituals and you conjure up and you speak to the dead to learn about the future. So it's like it's very interesting how all of these words are associated with magic. Like magic is like the umbrella, but it comes in such a very appealing and kind of innocent form. And I believe that it's very similar to being the counterfeit of what God offers with his way of doing things. And his, he's about being, not sleight of hand, straightforward. Straightforward, clean, not perversion. So when it comes to magic, there's perversion that enters into it, but it comes in subtle form, and that just leads us into the whole category of what deception is. So it's right to there. Like, yeah.
Yep, that's the word that came to mind. I was like, well, if you look at like scripture, Satan is the one that's the deceiver. So it's like that's his space. So as Christians, how much should we be partaking in deception?
Yeah.
Even like dating people, like how people be on the social media or like the dating sites, and they put out what they put out, and it's like, I'm 6 feet, and then you meet them, they're 4 feet or what. I don't know, it's drastic,
right.
But it's like there's so much deception tied into our daily lives that if you consider sleight of hand magic and sleight of hand deception, it's almost like you're practicing kind of witchcraft or whatever, like just for doing that. In general, giving one version of yourself to trick people, because that's what they call a magic trick. So like,
exactly, magic tricks. You're tricking them to believe a certain way that's not true. That's not even real. And then it goes to the whole world of fantasy, and it's just like when you're saying, just in simple terms, when it comes to dating and just like lying about your height. Just simple form. See, it happens so subtly that we don't really, like, if you're not in tune or paying attention or willing to be alert, you can miss it. And I know most of us, a lot of us have been in situations where we have been deceived. Like, it's not like it's not going to happen, but the matter is, when you know better, you do better. So if you're able to be aware of more so what the deception is. If you find out what the trick is, it's like finding out what that magic trick is. Oh, you did that and that. Okay, yeah, I get it. See, that's not the real deal. I get what you did now. So it's a matter of being able to be corrected and redirected into the right, the right way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. And one of the happiest places on earth, supposedly, is Disney World or Land. I don't know which one. Both of them are both happy places. And I don't know. It's a really hard question, I guess, for me to structure. But what are your thoughts about how I don't say we're not manipulated, but like there's a lot of persuasion to conform to the ideologies that like Disney puts out there, and most of their stuff is magic based, like witchcraft. How do you? I don't know. Do you want to speak to that point as far as like how it's ingrained in our culture and why we kind of flock to it without conscience? You know, nothing saying, "Oh no, that's bad. It's magic." Like you're like, "No, it's Disney. They're cute." You know.
Yeah, and it's like, see, that's where it can get really, really sticky because our culture is so ingrained in it. Like I said, we even grew up on Disney, and it's like there were certain movies, like I'm thinking, kind of like Cinderella, Snow White. What's the one? Let's see, everything Disney-wise. Some things might not be as obvious as others. So, it just gets real sticky because there's, like I said, it goes back to those levels. Like we can look at the older movies that Disney had come out with when we were growing up, and we can look at them now, and more of them are 3D, and they're just super animated, amazing graphics, like very appealing to the eye aesthetically, and yet they're still incorporating like spells, just simple spells. And I think that when it comes to it being so enculturated in our society, like you have to be willing to be open to be alert of if you would want yourself or your children to be exposed to that. I think more conversation will have to go into like kids who are watching. I mean, Frozen. Everybody knows about Frozen. But if you really look and analyze at Frozen, it's like, oh, all this enchantment and stuff. Like, Frozen has amazing graphics. Like, I look at that. Like, I've seen many Disney movies. But I believe that regardless of it being considered like a form, or they delve or work with witchcraft because it's all entwined, I think more conversation will have to be made with the children that's growing up, given them an understanding of what that is. And then I would have to say it's a huge like hope, or just for people who are in animation and in those positions, it would really have to be like a whole change in the mindset of how it's being done, which that would just be totally revolutionary, and it would take a whole lot of time. But if people were positioned in those places to actually make changes, that would be a great thing. But we have to deal with what we're working with right now. And a lot of people are not aware. They either don't care or they're not aware.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that's fair, because I could easily say I wouldn't be aware if like I didn't have certain kind of like relationship with God where he's more sensitive to things, because I definitely was heavily into all of those things. And even like when I mean, a little bit sidebar, but getting into like trick or treat and stuff, to me it was about candy. It wasn't about spirits and bad things or whatever, but you know, once you're like, hold on, what am I doing here? It changes things. And one of the Disney movies that both of us felt uncomfortable watching was the Princess Frog or whatever. It's so crazy because, you know, people have given the enemy, like they given like Satan like this kind of image of like a terrifying and scary, but like you said about Frozen, like it's actually really appealing. And we see that with Princess Frog, you know, you have this, oh wow, it's finally like a black princess, but then it's like, oh man, I can't really be excited about it because she's not practicing witchcraft, but in the movie there was a scene that was like voodoo, and it was just so strong and like so. I felt like I was practicing with them.
That's deep.
Oh, like what about that maybe made you uncomfortable?
Wow, that was a few years back. And I, like, ever since then, I never went back to actually watch the movie or watch it all the way through. So I did not see The Princess Frog all the way through. Like you mentioned before, I did walk out. I walked out. I don't even know if it was the middle of the movie, but I do know that the scene, I believe they were on, what is that, in the bayou in Louisiana?
Mm-hmm.
How they,
all that.
I think it was like they were on a boat or something, and something was being talked about or spoke of, and then it was like this ritual that had occurred. And I remember I was sitting there, and I had this internal struggle because I was like, okay, if I walk out of here, I'm gonna be looked at as weird. What's wrong with you? If I stay here, I'm not going to feel comfortable. And I'm like, at the same time, like, oh my gosh, this is being fed to the kids. Like, I was excited that it was a black princess. I was excited about that. Like, that's the reason why I went. But I was like, oh snap. Unfortunately, why does the black princess have to be connected with such sorcery? Like, what? I kind of felt some way about that. And so I was going through that internal struggle. And to stop that struggle, I just said, well, I'm going to just get up and walk out. I mean, I have a history of working with children, so I keep them in mind. I believe that that's something that God just placed in my heart. It's nothing I'm like, had a passion for in the beginning, but I've always been mindful of that. So it was more like an angering feeling too, because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're literally teaching kids, like, this is what you do. This is okay. This is fine. And when you start participating in things of that's alluring, that might be subtle or seem so innocent, then it opens your mind to ideas, which is like, God tells us we have to guard our heart. Our heart is mine. Like, you have to be aware of the influences, and children can get a hold of those small concepts, and depending on how often they're watching it, that's going to be nurtured, and then they're going to start acting in it. And then what happens in everything that we're involved in that we like? We grow in it. We expand in it. We get better in it. That's like with anything, whether it's positive or negative. I mean, you practice being a liar, you gonna become a major liar. Like, comes up with different schemes and strategies. But if you practice living a life where, you wanna be faithful to God and you walking in His principles, He's going to expand your territory of influence, and He's going to make sure that He is, dealing with your heart so you can reflect Him correctly as an image bearer. So it's just a matter of, it's being aware. Yes, it's everywhere. It's not just in movies. It's a lot of things, especially now, that is not, I would say, clean or kosher. Like, it's not clean. It's a lot of things that are perverted, but I think it's just time for those who are placed in positions, positions that have the skill, the gift, and the ability to actually make a difference, no matter if it's just like one step that was different, or one conversation that was had in a corporate meeting over a video or a movie. Like, it can be just one thing, one slight change in a positive direction where that can actually be rooted out. Because, we're supposed to be bringing heaven to earth. So but it's a big job, and definitely need God's help to do it.
And I mean, even if we're not in that industry, we can be praying for those that are there. Right. Ironically, Dewan's on here. Hey, Dewan. And he made a comment. And I know he's in that industry, and I know he's a child of God. So it's like, there's this thing called that 7 mountains of influence or whatever. Like, I think it's like media or entertainment or something. Like, those are places of influence, and it's really good to be in those places so you can change those cultures, change the atmosphere for the glory of God. Obviously, this is a fallen world. We're not expecting it to become heaven, but, as Christians, we're still here and we have our job, not to just here and just like accept things, but like see what we can do. But I see Melissa was saying that she's sad about Disney being wrong about the way that they're influencing the kids, and Dawn said, and that Dawn said it's because Disney keeps making all those old fairy tale movies back in the day. And yeah, they just keep replaying them and reworking. Right. I think that's what Hollywood does anyway. They just recycle. I don't know. So it would be really dope if the people who are connected to the creator, Christians, would be creative and change that. But I know it's going to take time, and like it's a big project. But we are talking about the Black Princess that finally arrived and magic. So let's talk a little bit about Black girl magic. So personally, I'm wondering, does it not make me Black because I'm not interested in Black girl magic? Because of what we just spoke about with magic and how that's like Antichrist, my God. Right. It seems like so empowering to say, but then I'm like, I want Black women to feel empowered and Black girls to feel empowered to be beautiful and accept their melanin and their hair and everything that God's given them and work that, Right. But when you mix the magic, you got me stepping out the room. I'm sorry. I can't sign up for that part. Because when it's not skin color, I got to be right with God. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. God first. What are your thoughts about Black girl magic?
So with Black girl magic, I remember when I first started hearing it, and I saw it as a hashtag. It was mainly like a hashtag all over social media to a point where it was like, oh, okay, I seen it here. Then a lot of people that I was associated with, Black women in particular, were using it too. And I was just like, I know initially with me not even knowing what the hashtag originated from or where, I initially was like, I kind of felt some kind of way because I'm like, Black girl magic, great. Okay, so I can understand as far as the viewpoint that the creator of the movement, I understand what she meant to a certain extent. Yeah. And then when it comes to doing social media and finding something that's catchy and it's going to sound good, it definitely sounds good. I mean, Black girl magic is very alluring. It's very appealing. But if you're really considering the words, and here's like, I know as believers, we feel strongly about, period, the word of God. And we know that when God created the heavens and the earth, he spoke it and it came into existence. So words have weight. Words carry power. Words can create. So it's just like if you put a label even on a child when they're young about if they can't do something, oh, you'll never get that, or why you have such a hard time, like even if it's positive or negative, but mainly they remember those negative things and they attach themselves to that label. So when it comes down to words, period, we have to be mindful of what words can open doors to. So if you're labeling yourself as Black girl magic, once again, it's putting the culture with a whole bunch, it's putting it back into that arena. Even if you don't mean like, hey, it's not like I'm calling you a witch or a sorcerer or a foreteller. That's not what I'm saying. I know that's not her meaning behind it. But if you just look at the term, if you just look at the term, Black girl magic, that's putting the culture with what unfortunately separated us from God in the first place, because the form of idolatry. When we are operating in those activities, and see, it can literally start by a word. It can start by a label. I'm not saying just because you use Black Girl Magic today, like in a hashtag right now, I'm not saying that you're, oh my gosh, like, I'm not saying that, but it's a start. So we have to be aware of what route are we walking on. Because it's always, whatever path we're walking, there's always a starting point. It's always that seed. And whenever we start nurturing that seed, or nurturing with more and more words, we start dabbling in more of the activities. And then it becomes a part of our life. And you want to make sure you're going the correct route. What's the correct route? Well, I know there are people of many different faiths, but as a believer of Jesus Christ, I know that he is a living God. He's not dead in a grave somewhere. So if you haven't tried him before, I would say I would at least try a living God. I mean, at least, because if you research a lot of the other ones, they're pretty much dead. And they didn't start from the beginning. So, I mean, no offense. I'm just being real. So with God, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's what Jesus himself said. And no one comes unto God except through him. So he is the door. And like any door, you walk through the door, and guess what? The relationship becomes deeper and deeper. Just like when a baby is born, we have to grow. We're being nurtured, and then we grow, and we grow, and we grow from that nurturing. That's the same thing when it comes to walking with God. That's the same thing when it comes to being involved in just something that's as simple as what we're saying with Black Girl Magic. It's a starting point. And we have to be more aware of that. Words have power.
Yep. I think that's like the key thing is awareness. So like, and a lot of what you said, words have power and everything, but I just want to simplify it a little bit, like awareness. So I'm not here judging anybody, right? Adrian's not judging anybody, but we want to be like, spotlight, like, did you consider this term a little bit deeper and like what that means for you? If you're calling yourself a Christian, what does that mean? Like, I keep coming back to that, like, thought, like, are we more Black than Christian kind of thought, you know? It's like, it's nice to be empowered and accept yourself and celebrate your beauty, whatever that is, no matter how fair skin or how, brown skin you are, anything in between. It's really dope to embrace what God has given you, but to embrace what God's given you and then take God out of it is kind of like, we just want to, like, let me think about that real quick. So, do my closing. Just want to give that disclaimer, no judgment here. This is definitely a place of conversation and going a little bit deeper into things instead of just taking surface, like what's handed to us. Like Disney just handed us this, and I have the opportunity to decide if I agree or if I want that into my house, into my headspace, and with my children one day whenever I have them. So it's like we have that decision that we can make, and I feel the same with the hashtag. What do you want to associate yourself with? More important, what's most important to you in your life? At the end of the day, we all gonna leave. So I'll be like, I'm standing there before God in my head. When I make decisions, I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm just standing here, right? Just me and God, not all my critics or anything else. And I just gotta be right with God. That's it. So I'm gonna do my closing. Adrian, if you have anything else that you want to share, we didn't touch on real quick, definitely feel welcome. But we want to thank everybody who tuned in, who's tuning in, who will tune in, for joining us today on Diversity Chats. We bridge the gaps to diversity and destroy ignorance before it destroys another life. Thank you again to Adrian for joining me today. I appreciate your time. And did you have any closing remarks, any thoughts that you want to share before we close out?
I would just say that I totally 100% agree as far as awareness. I agree with that. And just like us all, like we all are a work in progress and we're learning things and we're growing in things. Like that's going to always be. So it's not like I always knew this because I didn't. Everything has a starting point.
That's so real. That helps us be to ourselves and to others. And I agree. Like I said, I was trick or treating. Like, give me some Skittles, give me some fireworks. I'm here. And I used to love dragons. And then Soleil like checked me on that. She was like, "Oh, that's the devil." I'm like, "You're so." I'm thinking like super religious. Like, but you read the Bible, it's like, "Nah, it's the devil." Okay.
This ain't the way to go. Right.
Oh, and Juan said he misses both of us. We miss you too, friend. I can say that
too. Oh.
Glad you're in the industry, Juan, because I trust God in you, and so I know you're a light in darkness, and thank you for your confidence. So we will see all y'all in the next episode. Bless you, Adrian. See ya, everybody.